Hello everyone, this is Dr. Jasper Vincent Q. Alantaga of De La Salle University, Manila. For this session, I'll be sharing with you one web tool that I use in my online distance learning courses. The name of the tool is Zeetings. My session covers why we need to use Zeetings as a teaching learning tool, as well as how to go about using Zeetings. Without further ado, let's proceed. Okay, so what you can see on your screen right now is a sample Zeeting presentation that we're gonna use for this guided demonstration. If you want to try it out, you may type in this particular URL. At its core, Zeetings is a presentation tool. I always say think of it as an upgraded PowerPoint presentation. As such, you can use it when you're conducting virtual classes with Google Meet or Zoom or any other video conferencing tool. As a presentation tool, you can go sequentially through your slides in Zeetings. Aside from being a great presentation tool, Zeetings is highly recommended because of the interactivity that it offers for teachers and students. Let me share with you some of the interactivities you can do with Zeetings. So first and foremost, as teachers, we have to click on Present. From this window, you can see the presentation link of your Zeetings. This is something that you will set the first time you sign up for Zeetings. So make sure that it is something suggestive of you. Like in this case, I'm using JVQA, which stands for my name. As mentioned in the instructions, you can share this Zeetings presentation link to your students so that they can interact with the Zeetings. So let's start presenting our Zeetings. On the top left, you can see that the Zeetings right now is on air. Let's open another window to serve as our student window. Okay, here is our current setup. On the left side, we can see the teacher view of our Zeetings, and then on the right side, we can see the student view. I always tell to teachers it's important to also have an idea of how it looks like on the end of the student so that you can use the tool properly. Okay, so you can see right now, we only have one student out of possible 500 logged in our Zeetings. And by default, when they go to our Zeetings, they should see what the teacher sees. In this particular slide, we can see one of the most basic interactivity of Zeetings, which is to hyperlink a text into another destination. So for students, this means that they can click on the link and it will open and redirect them to a new tab of that particular link. Let's take a look at some other interactivities we can do. Going back to the teacher, you can simply click on your slide to move forward. And as you can see, the moment you do so, the student window also automatically moves and gets updated. On the teacher side, this is what we call the 5-point star interactivity, or the scale interactivity. You can see here I have a question posted to my students on how they would rate themselves as designer of a presentation, from novice all the way to expert. And on the right side, you can see that it appears almost the same, but there's a submit button for students. So as a student, I can select my star rating. Okay, for example, I would say 2 stars and then click on submit. So immediately after I submit my response, it will carry over and be noted in the teacher's screen. So if you have multiple students logged into the same Zeetings, you can conduct a poll using a 5-point scale, and the average rating will be reflected. Let's move on to the next slide. One thing that you can also do in Zeetings is to add images. So you can see here, my image talks about death by PowerPoint. Let me reiterate at this point in time that one primary reason that we want to use Zeetings in our online classes is to help combat the death by PowerPoint. We all know our students have seen PowerPoints in their face-to-face classrooms, and at times, these PowerPoints does not translate or becomes really boring when we use them as is online. So we need to add a little spice in our presentation, and that's exactly what Zeeting does, as I said. This next slide showcases what we call the thumbs up, thumbs down interactivity in Zeetings. So you can see here on the teacher side, I have a yes or no question. And then on the student side, they can respond by either clicking thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, so let's act as a student. And I would say we have all experienced that by PowerPoint one time or another. So let's click yes and submit. So as soon as it is submitted, then it is noted in the teacher view. And if you have more responses, the percentage is automatically computed. So again, you can do a quick poll of your students during your virtual classes and make it a little more interactive. Okay, so let's move forward for now. Okay, so this particular interactivity is what we call the text input interactivity. You can see that on the teacher side, there is our question, okay, and we have no responses so far. On the student side, we can see the same question, but there's an avenue for students to type in their responses. Okay, the limit is 100 characters, so let's take a look. For me, a deadly PowerPoint is one which is text heavy, right? So let's submit our response. So as soon as the students submit the response, it will be carried over and noted in the teacher's view. Okay. Similarly, it will also reflect on the student's view. And the more text entries are submitted, it will be shuffling through all these submissions. So usually, it will appear 3 at a time and then randomly shuffle through all the submitted responses. This particular interactivity in Zeetings is what we call the ranking interactivity. So on the teacher's perspective, we've set up the instruction for our students to rank the following tips in making a presentation, one being the most important. And on the student side, we can see that these items are numbered from 1 to 8 in this case, and the students can rank and order the items based on their perceived importance. Okay, so as students, we can simply click on the up and down arrow to move items up the numbers, or we can just drag the number to the corresponding rank. Okay, and just the same, when we submit our ranking, it should carry over to our teacher's perspective. You can notice that it does not automatically appear as opposed to the other interactivity. This is because in Zeetings, you can also change the setting in such a way that the results will appear after you click the slide. So you can see right now there is one response, and if we click next as teachers, we should see the summary of the response. Okay, so you can see as we have only one response, it mirrors exactly the vote of the student. If we have more than one response, it will again take the average of the ratings. Especially for us in HEIs, students are allowed to bring their devices and their mobile phones inside the classroom. So you can imagine it's always going to be a challenge on how our students can use their device in academic ways and not just for entertainment purposes. Since we're doing online learning, this challenge is further multiplied. You can imagine there will be much more distractions at home compared to the classroom, and it's really a challenge for teachers to monitor students' use of devices at home. This is another reason why we want to use Zeetings, so that students will be able to maximize their device and not just be e-watching us during our webinar lectures. We want them to play an active role and as such maintain their attention in our online discussions. This particular slide showcase what we call the word cloud interactivity of Zeetings. We can see on the teacher's view, we posted a question on what do your students use their device for in class. On the right side, you can see students can plug in 3 answers to the question. As a teacher, you can always set the number of boxes you want available for your students. Okay, so let's try to type in some items in our word clouds. So usually games, Facebook, and let's type in Facebook again since we want to showcase the word cloud effect. So when students submit their entries, it will again be reflected on both the teacher and the student's views. So you can notice Facebook has a bigger text size compared to games. This is because, if you can remember, we entered Facebook twice. And that's exactly how word clouds work. So the most cited items would be bigger and the least cited items will be smaller. So just imagine if you have 40 students, the most common response will be the biggest item so that they can easily distinguish from the generated word cloud. As I said earlier, the challenge right now for ODL teachers is not just to present effective presentations, but to make their presentations as interactive and collaborative as possible. And again, Zeetings is one of those tools to make it possible. This particular slide shows what we call the multiple choice or multiple response interactivity. So you can see on the teacher side, we have here a multiple response question, okay, from A to F. And then on the student side, they can select all that applies for them. So in this case, let's try to answer. So we're familiar with PowerPoint, we're familiar with Prezi, we're familiar with Mentimeter and Pear Deck. By the way, Zeetings is very much similar to Pear Deck for Google Slides and Mentimeter. They are what we call classroom response system, which allows students to participate in real time during synchronous live sessions. So let's submit our entry. You can see on the teacher side that the result did not automatically appear. We again set it up such that the answers will appear after we click to the next slide. So let's do that. We have set this up so that the responses will appear after the next click. So let's do that. So you can see here in multiple choice or multiple response interactivity, the summary of responses will be presented in a bar graph and will show the percentage equivalent. So just imagine if you have again 40 students, the result of their poll entries will be reflected as bar graphs and percentage. Just like in your presentations, you can also insert videos in Zeetings. So you can see on the teacher side, we've inserted a YouTube video. And then on the right side, students are prompted to refer to the big screen. In the online environment, this big screen is your Google Meet or your Zoom video conference. Let's play this quick video as a recap to what Zeetings is all about. Okay, so that's again a short recap of what Zeetings is all about. In short, the ultimate goal of Zeetings is to enable teachers to say goodbye to boring presentations, especially now in the online distance learning environment. Before we dive into how we make our Zeetings, let me share with you one of the other interactivity we can do, which is to embed other resources. Earlier, we were able to insert image, videos, but as you can see here, we can also embed Google Docs, Google Forms, even Padlets, and other web tools directly into Zeetings. Finally, on the bottom part, you can see some other tools that your students can use during your Zeetings presentation. You can see, for example, the activity tool, which serves as a discussion board or the chat tool for Zeetings. For example, I can say, hello students, and post it. Okay, and then my students would see the prompt that there was one entry, and they can like the entry by hearting it, or they can reply to the entry. That gets reflected on the teacher's view. Other things that teachers can do is that teachers can see the list of people who have accessed Zeetings and signed on to Zeetings. There's also what we call the notes, wherein users can type in their notes and save it. This is very important because when students log in again to their Zeetings account, they will have access to the activity and the notes that they created. This note is free-flowing, so you can just type in your notes as is. for the entire Zeetings presentation. Okay, so let's stop our presentation and jump into how do we create our first Zeetings. So let's open the teacher window. Let us stop our live presentation. Okay, so the first thing that teachers would like to do is to sign up to a Zeetings account. You can just go to zeetings.com and sign in using your Gmail if you already have one. The first thing that you see is your Zeetings dashboard, wherein you can create a new Zeeting. So when you create a new Zeeting, it loads the interface for Zeeting, and what you can do is start adding content. So you can always change the title of your Zeeting, like sample. Okay, and as we said, you can add different types of content. So we can upload a PowerPoint, PDF, or image. We can even add a Canva design if you're familiar with Canva tool. We can create different polls. We've tried all of them. We've tried the thumbs up, multiple choice, scale, rank, text, and word cloud earlier. You can also create your own slide with text hyperlink, add a YouTube video, even create your own surveys, and as I said earlier, embed a content. So these are all the tools that are available for you to make a better presentation and not just stick with your typical PowerPoint presentation. In conclusion, let me pose the challenge to you guys to start upgrading your presentation, level it up by adding interaction with Zeetings. So that's it for my sharing, and I hope you learned a little something to help you improve your online distance learning courses. Bye-bye everyone, and enjoy your Zeetings production.